Joining me now with reaction to this developing story, columnist Coulter is with us. Two big questions that I have here. If they're not going for regime change, we've got two big questions before us. Number one, we've got the Israelis. Now, if Iran and Syria are saying if they get a cruise missile attack, they're going to attack Israel, is the president prepared to defend them? And number two,
no.
Well, that's a big.
Next
start
question.
with that one. Well, but wait a minute. We've got to consider that. And what's the point then of lobbing missiles?
Look, it's very depressing talking about foreign policy whenever a Democrat is president, because they don't care about America's national security interest. That should be the only concern of the man the Constitution makes the commander-in-chief. And by the way, I don't think the president does have to go to Congress to bomb someone. He's the commander-in-chief under the Constitution. If it were necessary, a commander-in-chief could do it. I do not think it is necessary. It wouldn't be a war. It would be bombing. I don't think it's necessary to do here. No, you can. Grenada wasn't a war. Let's put that aside and get back to Syria for a moment. Well, I'm right, so let's just leave it there and move on.
Well, I disagree, but go ahead. But it does say
there is a lot of military action the commander-in-chief can take. I do not think he should take it here, and I do not think, unfortunately, he is a Democrat, and Democrats generally they intervene when it is directly contrary to the interests of the United States. They seem to think it's selfish to do something that will help the United States, such as invade Iraq, take out a dictator, and preside over several democratic elections. No, that they're against. This is now the second time under the Obama administration that America has engaged in a military intervention, a continuation of a war in one case, solely so that our president wouldn't look like an idiot for something he said. Escalating the war in Afghanistan, the only reason he did that was that this rhetorical device to attack the war in Iraq, to say that was a war of choice, or a war of convenience, whereas Afghanistan, that's the real war. What does he think he's accomplishing in Afghanistan? And here it's because he said if chemical weapons were used, that's a red line.
The president has painted himself now into a corner. Now,
yeah, that's not a reason for America to go to...
All right, but here's the second part of this. I view any cruise missiles without regime change, this is like a therapeutic bombing. He gets to check the little column that says, oh, I bombed them because I said I would.
Right.
All right.
So he doesn't look like an idiot.
Putting Israel at risk. Now the second part is, now 30 months ago, there was opposition that was more secular, more pro-American. They no longer exist.
Yeah, it's too late now.
The likely regime replacement would be radical Islamists connected to Al-Qaeda. That ought to be the second big question.
No, he's made an absolute mess of it the same way he did with Egypt. We lose a leader, Mubarak, who is pro-American, who uses his military to kill terrorists, who is friendly to Israel. Oh, well, 3 strikes and you're out. Liberals want to take him out. Then we have the Muslim Brotherhood come in. No, total conflagration there. Same thing in Libya. Thank you, George Bush. George Bush had just turned the loon, what's his name, the Libyan, Gaddafi. They just turned Gaddafi into America's best friend by invading Iraq. Gaddafi goes running to England and says, is he going to invade me next? He instantly opens up, says, I'm giving up my nukes, I'm giving up my weapons of mass destruction. And that's when Obama wants to take him out. Democrats do not care about American national security. They are always making this country more dangerous. We are still living with the consequences of the Carter administration and what happened in Iran.
Take a break. You're going to stay right there.
Not only that.
And tonight, as we await President Obama's decision on Syria, the world is still reeling from the graphic video of the victims that was shot in the immediate aftermath of last week's chemical weapons attack. Now, yesterday, Secretary of State John Kerry delivered a forceful statement condemning the Assad regime's actions as, quote, moral obscenity, and while his tone was appropriately somber given the atrocities that were carried out by one of the world's most brutal dictators, I frankly could not help but notice that it was eerily similar to words that were spoken by Kerry decades ago. However, back in 1971, he wasn't talking about Assad. He was talking about the brave Americans who were fighting in the Vietnam War. Take a look at this disturbing comparison.
The indiscriminate slaughter of civilians, the killing of women and children and innocent bystanders by chemical weapons is a moral obscenity.
They relived the absolute horror of what this country, in a sense, made them do.
By any standard, it is inexcusable, and despite the excuses and equivocations that some have manufactured, it is undeniable.
They told the stories of times that they had personally raped, cut off ears, cut off heads.
I can't get the image out of my head of a man who held up his dead child, wailing while chaos swirled around him.
Cut off limbs, blown up bodies, randomly shot at civilians.
The images of entire families dead in their beds without a drop of blood or even a visible wound. Bodies contorting in spasms. Human suffering that we can never ignore or forget.
Razed villages in a fashion reminiscent of Genghis Khan. Shot cattle and dogs for fun.
Our sense of basic humanity is offended not only by this cowardly crime, but also by the cynical attempt to cover it up.
Poisoned food stocks and generally ravaged the countryside of South Vietnam, in addition to the normal ravage of war.
There must be accountability for those who would use the world's most heinous weapons against the world's most vulnerable people.
All right, still with us, the author, by the way, just out today in paperback, #1 New York Times bestseller, Mugged, Racial Demagoguery from the 70s to Obama, which is available out in bookstores today. And Coulter, you know, look, we all share the outrage, the images. Nobody wants to see these atrocities. But we've got to ask a question. This has been going on, the Civil War, for 30 months. There's 100,000 dead people.
Right. He should have intervened before. Now I suspect I think it's pretty clear it's too late now. That was the most amazing comparison of clips you just showed of John Kerry.
Pretty scary, isn't it?
It's really fantastic that I never thought liberals could learn. At least he's not describing American troops
for once
engaging in these atrocities. But I must say, I mean, we know that actually is happening in Syria. But it does remind me to go back to another useless Democrat president, Bill Clinton, when he went into Bosnia. And Madeleine Albright and Secretary of Defense Cohen claimed to us that hundreds of thousands of civilians were being murdered by Milosevic. And the UN goes and digs up bodies, and they find a few thousand men of military age. They wanted to intervene in Bosnia and specifically said, Madeleine Albright did, Bill Clinton did. This is America at its best because it serves no territorial interest, no national security interest of ours. This is what Democrats tell us. And again, the only reason Obama escalated a war in Afghanistan where there is no point to regime change, there are more goats than flush toilets there. The literacy rate is literally 19%. That is not a joke. The life expectancy is 44. What are we doing in Afghanistan? He's allowing Americans to die in Afghanistan because of a line he used on the campaign trail, and that's what's happening in Syria now. He said the red line if chemical weapons are used.
Well, you're right.
And now that's why we have to intervene.
Listen, what about the slaughter that was taking place in Rwanda or the Congo or any other place that we can point to on the earth?
There are a lot of places we could intervene.
All right, let me go to Ed Henry's report because I think this is pertinent. And this is what President Obama said back in 2007. And it goes back to the authority, whether you agree or disagree. I want to talk about the hypocrisy where he said, the president doesn't have the power under the Constitution to unilaterally authorize a military attack in a situation that does not involve stopping an actual or imminent threat to this country.
Right.
So based on his definition, what he is going to do is unconstitutional.
More proof that I'm right. Of course, the commander-in-chief has that power. And it's appalling that the American people would elect that man commander-in-chief. But that having been done, look, Obama also said, oh, he's going to shut down Guantanamo. Are you sorry he didn't shut down Guantanamo? The question is the merits of this particular intervention. I think you were right in what you said at the beginning. Too late now. Would have been good a few months ago. But now it's going to be like Egypt again.
But here's the big problem.
Who's going to come to power? And by the way, why didn't he intervene after the election in Iran a couple of years ago?
2009.
When Ahmadinejad stole the election, you have peaceful protesters, completely the opposite of Afghanistan, highly literate, populist, pro-Western, beautiful country for regime change. No, Obama goes out and gets an ice cream cone.
Tell me where I'm wrong here. I don't see any possible good outcome. Either Assad stays, or let's say one of the cruise missiles lands right on his head and he's gone. The likely successor to him is that will be Obama having helped al-Qaeda get into power in Syria.
Right.
How good? That can't be good for Israel, the region, or America.
I suspect, and this is a prediction, so take it with a grain of salt, that the bombing, if he does bomb, and it looks like he's going to, because, oh, he said there was a red line, will be the equivalent of the impeachment day bombing under Bill Clinton. He'll lob a few bombs over there, say I did it.
Yeah.
There's our red line, ha-ha, we bombed you, but it won't develop into a huge conflagration, and Assad will stay in power.
You know what I call it? It's a therapeutic bombing. He gets to check the box. Okay, I upheld my threat.
But
it's
who
a lot of
knows?
danger.
Look at what happened in Egypt. No, we took out a ruler who was good for the United States and put in the Muslim Brotherhood.
Which they
Do
didn't see
not
coming.
vote for Democrats for Commander-in-Chief America. This is what happens.
All right, and Coulter.